Good afternoon and welcome everyone to our presentation on how outsourcing can improve productivity and deliver faster. Quick introductions. My name is Noel, a consultant at Brainbox Consulting, and together with my colleagues James and Bridget, we will walk you through our presentation today. A bit more about our company. We are Brainbox Consulting, a Netherlands-based consultancy company focused on the digital transformation of procurement processes, with the use of our procurement expertise and SAP Ariba. Last week, we introduced Brainbox's Sourcing as a Service, our fully managed service for your strategic sourcing activities. In this presentation, we would like to address the consideration of outsourcing your sourcing activities and the benefits to gain in this scenario. More specific, on how outsourcing can improve productivity and deliver faster results. In this session, my colleague James will discuss the relevance of outsourcing, explain the concept of effective hourly rate, why and when to eliminate, automate, or delegate tasks, why sourcing events should be delegated, and how sourcing as a service can drive value for your business by working together with us. I would like to give the word to James.
Thank you very much, Noel. Welcome, everybody. As Noel said, we are Brainbox. We recently just launched our Sourcing as a Service offering, and we're very, very proud to present this to you today. So the case for outsourcing in general isn't new. And if you cast your mind back, if you did any history or any economics at school, you probably came across this guy. His name is Adam Smith. He's a very famous 18th century economist whose most popular or most famous work was called The Wealth of Nations. And one of his concepts was called division of labor. And back in the 18th century, of course, we didn't have computers. But what Adam Smith did as part of this study was to observe the manufacturing of pins. And what they did was give each factory worker a specific role within the making of a pin, and to make them specialized in that specific piece along their production line. And while different manufacturing excellence theories have superseded that to some extent, especially with things like the Toyota production system from automotive, the core concept remains that you as an individual or you as a company will not be experts at everything. And there are certain things that through outsourcing them or by delegating them, you can do faster, cheaper, or better, or even all three in some cases. So this economic theory, we really want to just introduce as the history behind what we're going to look at today, and how maybe you can consider, if your procurement team is under some challenges regarding resource, how you can free up some white space to be able to concentrate on core activities that you're good at, that you can do better than an external company with your in-house expertise. So at the center of this is a concept called effective hourly rate. So that is, what are your staff, what are your employees, what are your team being paid per hour? And is that commensurate to the work that they are doing day in, day out? Because what all of us know is that the average procurement category manager has to do both highly strategic tasks, but also they get dragged into a lot of operational and some transactional tasks as well, at least in, I would say, 95% of organizations. So effective hourly rate is a bit of a sanity check, and it takes a procurement manager's annual salary. We're going to divide that then by the number of hours that they work, and that is going to be their effective hourly rate. So the question that I would like you to have in the back of your minds as we go through this little exercise is what you're effectively paying your team, your staff, in line with the tasks that they undertake each day? So let's do a simple walkthrough calculation. So we've used some numbers here from the Netherlands. It's obviously going to be different depending on the region or the jurisdiction that you're in. But you know your numbers, you can apply the same calculation to where you work or where your team is based. So the average salary for a procurement manager in the Netherlands with 5+ years experience is about €70,000 per annum. Add on to this, the Netherlands has quite high social contributions from employers. So if we add 20% on average onto that an employer would have to pay in for their social insurance, health insurance costs, then you're at about €84,000 as the cost to the company to employ that person. If we then divide that by 225 working days, this is Europe. The average person here gets 30 days paid holiday, plus then 10 public holidays on average. So that's where we got the 225 from. That gives you an average day rate of €373, which we then divide by an average 7.5 hour working day. If we take the typical 8 to 5 or 9 to 6 day with an hour's worth of lunch and coffee breaks in the middle, then you're getting an effective hourly rate for a good experienced procurement manager of just under €50 per hour. So then what we need to ask ourselves is, are all the tasks that person is doing worth paying that for? How much, for example, could be outsourced, which is obviously where we'll come in, and we'll go through this in a couple of slides' time. But also think, are the tasks that could be delegated to a more junior person on that team? If you've got a senior, experienced procurement professional running around offices chasing signatures on contracts, or submitting their own travel expenses, or booking their own meeting rooms, is that a valuable use of their time? And I would say categorically, no, it's not. An admin assistant should be doing it. So how much can be delegated to a more junior person on your team, but also how much could be outsourced and performed more effectively by an external service provider? So moving on from that, we're going to put this into 3 different buckets: the eliminate bucket, the automate bucket, and the delegate bucket, in terms of how we're going to deal with the different tasks that come across the average procurement manager's desk on a daily basis. So let's start off with eliminate. Which tasks should we eliminate? Well, typically anything that could be considered pointless bureaucracy that serves no purpose, that has no value to it. And examples of these are having to fill out travel authorization requests. This is busy work at its finest. It has no commercial benefit. Just give each department a travel budget and let them manage that effectively as they see fit. And likewise for things like having to do competitive tendering, if you've got a low value, non-critical, non-recurring purchase. If you're buying something once that costs maybe €2,000 or pounds or dollars, you shouldn't be spending time going out and getting 3 offers, because the cost of the procurement professional's time in administering that is not commensurate to the saving that you're going to see at the end of the day. Even if you get 5% saving from that, that's €100, but then all the time that someone spent doing it, if a procurement professional has spent 3 or 4 hours of doing that, then net it's a cost rather than a saving if you count someone's time as a commodity. Next comes repetitive tasks. So repetitive tasks are typically the types of things that we're starting to see ever more now being replaced by procurement tech. And a lot of the big players in the market, SAP Ariba being one of them, are inventing solutions that can automate a lot of day-to-day transactional work that is important and is necessary, but is not value added in terms of commercial benefit that it delivers. So examples are things like scanning invoices for errors that we can now use artificial intelligence for, and things like automated processes like sending purchase orders to vendors, whereas 10, 15 years ago we were probably still sending faxes to vendors with purchase orders. Maybe you still are if you're looking in some more immature marketplaces. I know certainly I spent some time in South Africa and it was quite common to do that. But these things now can be either automated or we can leverage AI to do them. And then finally, what should you delegate? Well, into the delegate bucket, it's really looking at everything that you're doing as a department and then trying to ascertain, okay, how much of this is value added, but we are not particularly experts at, either because we don't have the in-house deep knowledge, or we don't have good enough data, or increasingly that you don't have the technology available to be able to get the most from that particular task. And again, I've given a couple of examples here: e-sourcing, which we're going to talk about today, and also something like supplier risk analysis. If you want to look at real-time financial information of suppliers, or what's happening geopolitically in some more exotic markets, or detailed analysis on what are currencies or commodities going to be doing in 6 to 12 months time, these are the sorts of things that specialist service providers will have better access to than the average corporation. Especially now, in a crisis, the first things typically that get cut are subscriptions to things like market intelligence, which, if you ask me, it's a false economy and it's penny wise and pound foolish. But nonetheless, in large corporate organizations, those seem to be the things that get cut first of all. So let's look now at e-sourcing, and specifically sourcing as a service. So why should you delegate sourcing events specifically? Well, first of all, if you have hiring freezes at the moment, or even worse, if you're having to actively lose people in your department, it gives you additional resource without adding to your full-time equivalent headcount. It enables you to manage any capability gaps in your existing procurement team. So if you have the people but you don't have the right skills, we can come in and manage it for you. Obviously, you don't need to purchase any licenses because we would hold the license. So you're not going to have to put in any CapEx. And it's really about working smarter rather than working harder, and using us really as a right hand, as an extra right hand to help you drive your objectives. And what you would typically see is a return on investment in months, in some instances, even weeks. If it's an immature category that's never been managed properly and put through a rigorous tender process using some of the top tricks of the trade, you could even see an almost immediate return on investment depending on how fast you implement. It will also free up strategic resources in your department to put their time to better use. Using an e-sourcing tool is not straightforward in many cases. There are pieces of software now on the market that are very focused on usability, but because of that, they're quite light on functionality. That's usually the trade-off that you get. So if you are looking at investing in sourcing software and you want something with a great UX, yes, you'll be able to find it, but they're usually pretty light on features. With what we offer as well, it's completely risk-free, and you as the client would maintain full control over what you want us to do. So think of us really as an extension of your in-house team. We can do as much or as little as you want us to, depending on the expertise and the maturity of your sourcing organization. So if you don't have the in-house expertise, we can literally manage things for you completely end to end, from design phase right the way through to negotiation with the vendors and even business award and implementation. But I know that a lot of more mature sourcing organizations will actually want to maintain some control over that, which is fine, because with Noel as our SAP Ariba expert, he will construct the event for you and do all of what we call the grunt work, that he's really good at and enjoys doing, but typically what a sourcing manager, myself included, hated doing, because it involves a lot of deep knowledge of SAP Ariba or another e-sourcing tool. So that really is the piece that we take off your hands. All of the hassle around suppliers having technical issues signing up or maintaining communication with the platform, dealing with technical queries, all of that, which typically takes up a huge amount of bandwidth during a sourcing event, is, even for mature sourcing organizations, something that we can really add a lot of value there and take off your hands to free up your team's white space to spend on what they should really be doing, rather than trying to figure out how to use a complex piece of software. So how will the service specifically help you in driving your goals? Now that we've gone through, what are some of the benefits of using us? Well, it will allow you to have more credible, more data-driven negotiations especially with your incumbent vendors. So if you're using this as a tool to drive cost down from incumbent vendors, as opposed to looking to move away or looking to, bring in some new suppliers, if you really want to do that, use this as a tool to sort of push prices down with your incumbents, but you don't really want to switch, maybe because your validation processes are quite long, or you require authorization from your end customer to change suppliers. I know that's common in automotive especially. Data is the new gold. So having credible data and a structured process will make your negotiations much more powerful than just doing the more traditional, banging your fist on the table and having negotiation as a power play between you and the vendor. It also gives a lot more transparency in the tendering process. It's much more difficult for suppliers to accuse you of favoritism or of giving more attention to incumbent vendors, because if the RFI and the Q&A sessions and the pre-meetings and any supplier town halls are handled within the platform as a group conference call or video call, instead of having individual meetings privately with each vendor, it makes that much more transparent and it makes it a lot more visible. And certainly my own personal experience from doing this, I ran an e-tender a couple of years ago on road transportation, and we did just that. We had a town hall as we were preparing to launch the event in Ariba, and the suppliers really appreciated the transparency. And of course, they had questions that they wanted to ask us privately after the event, and that was fine. But to bring them all together in one space, I think it really gave them a sense of confidence that we weren't trying to play them against one another. It also, and this is becoming more and more of a thing now, that internal auditors, we all know them, we all probably hate them. They're quite draconian. So it gives more structured, more compliant RFPs and RFQs that satisfy internal auditors' needs. So instead of people having to scratch around in their inboxes and on their C drives, or even on SharePoint, which, let's be honest, SharePoint is not user-friendly and it's not easy to find stuff on there, and generally it's a bit of a pain to use. Having all of your events in Ariba make it very, very easy for you to show an internal auditor what you've done and what your selection criteria were and how you went about doing that end-to-end sourcing process. It can also, within the system, avoid any lengthy discussions around contractual terms post-event, because one of the things that you can do in here is to set up the quotation sheets as gated content, where the supplier would only get to see that and be able to bid on it once they've gone in and accepted your general terms and conditions, or at least it gives you the chance to have that discussion around redline and any involvement from legal before you launch the event. Because I'm sure I've certainly been there. I'll put my hand on my heart and say I've made this mistake too, that I've run an event, I've awarded business to a supplier, and then they've come back with redline issues in the contract that really we should have done prior to getting quotes back. So it allows you to do that, even if you want to make this a longer process and involve legal upfront, or if you just want to do a bit more of a take it or leave it approach and say, you need to accept our terms to get access, that you can do that in the event as a milestone. What Ariba and what Sourcing as a Service from doing this with us would also enable you to do is we can work with you to make your events weighted and take into account different factors other than price, because it's a bit of a buzzword at the moment that procurement is more than savings, and yes it is, but ultimately, of course, we're still measured on what we deliver in terms of benefits of the business, in terms of what hits the P&L. So on average, using e-sourcing events using SAP Ariba, according to the research done by SAP, delivers on average between 8 to 14% in cost reduction to their clients. So yes, price isn't everything, but without a saving, it's very difficult to have a business case on some of the other aspects like delivery performance and quality and supply chain reliability. So it does allow you to put weighted outcomes in if you want to weight something like payment terms or lead time or geographical location, or even things even more these days like sustainability or particularly diversity. If you're in North America and in South Africa, that's a big part of sourcing. In Europe, less so. It allows you to take all of those factors into consideration. So why use SAP Ariba specifically, and why use sourcing as a service? Why use Brainbox essentially to do this on your behalf versus, and we always say this a little bit tongue in cheek, but it's true, we don't see other consultancies as competition. We see the biggest competition out there as being sourcing departments that are still managing their tenders using Excel and email and maybe SharePoint as well. So it allows you to ensure better upfront planning, because if you're outsourcing this to us, we're obviously going to force you to be a bit more organized, or a lot more organized with your planning, to make sure that Noel can go in and structure your event as you want it. And so as we can then work with you to understand what you want to get out of the event, so as ultimately you can get your better results faster from the event and move forward to the stage of awarding the business and getting into the nitty-gritty of implementation, because we've designed all of the weighted analysis, we've done all of the TNCs, we've done all the legal stuff. We've designed the event so as you get apples to apples comparisons, the way that we structure it. So there will be more upfront work, but that will enable us through better preparation to get to the end game faster. And having those bids in a harmonized format submitted, rather than the supplier, which is what typically happens in Excel and email. You send them something, you send them an Excel sheet for them to quote on. They ignore it, they send you a quote on a PDF file, and you have to copy and paste all of that back into an Excel file, and then you don't really know what basis they've quoted on because half of the details that you need from them are missing. Ever been there? I know I have. I guess probably everyone on the call has too at some point in their career. It also eliminates, and this is a really big one, especially in departments that have quite high turnover of staff, it eliminates data storage silos. What does that mean in plain English? Well, it means if somebody's run a sourcing event and then they leave the company and all of that data is in their inbox and on their C drive, or even if it's on SharePoint in a folder that they've named that you don't know what they've named it and you don't know where it's saved, because let's be honest, it's not easy to find stuff on SharePoint. This eliminates all of that, because if everyone has access to Ariba, you just go in, all of the events are named in a standard format, and you'll be able to find what you're looking for very, very quickly. So you will never have what I call a U2 situation where you still haven't found what you're looking for. Sorry, I always put music and song titles into my jokes. And it will also finally drastically cut any ambiguity in the proposals that you're getting from your suppliers, because like I mentioned, it will enable you to have a harmonized bid submission, but also things like units of measure or box size or order size or minimum order quantity, lead time, if there's a premium around getting deliveries faster or anything like that, all of that will be accounted for within the tender. So finally, why Brainbox? Well, and Noel, feel free to jump in if you want to add anything here, but we're headquartered in the Netherlands, and our consulting team are fully EU based. This is not offshoring per se. This is just an outsourced process that we're offering you. We're fully GDPR compliant, obviously, as a European business. And what we see as our real niche offering is that we have a small team who are a mix of both SAP certified Ariba consultants as well as seasoned procurement experts like myself who have real world procurement experience out there in industry. I've not sat in an ivory tower all my career and just made pretty slides. I worked 17 years in industry, also doing things at plant level with the implementation and getting my hands dirty. So I know what the situation is like on the floor. I'm not just someone that's got an MBA and then went straight into a consultancy to make slides for a living. I know how it is on the ground, and I know how getting buy-in from stakeholders and internal business partners can often be a challenge. We're small enough to be nimble and flexible, and you will actually get to know our team personally. That means you will have our direct contact details. You're not going to be submitting tickets to call centers that are outsourced to another third party. We don't do any of that. We do all of that in-house. You will be speaking to me and Noel and other members on the team with your event. It's not going to be it's not going to be a holding at length relationship. We're going to be very hands-on with you, and we can design, prepare, execute, consult, and implement your event. Or if you want us to, we can just prepare and execute it for you, and you can do the upfront part, and you can then also then take what we give you and run with the negotiation, award, and implementation piece yourselves. It really is up to you. So with that, I will hand over back to Noel to run through what we guarantee as part of this, and then to Bridget, if anyone's got any Q&A, to run through that. We've got about 12 minutes left, so yeah.
Thank you, James, for sharing your knowledge on this topic. In addition to the service we deliver, we would also like to present our guarantee, in which we want to invite you to try our service for free on a no-cure, no-pay basis. We would like you to convince that our process works and that you want to run more events with us. We then charge a transparent fee per event, with no annual subscriptions and no inflexible contracts. If we don't save you at least our fees, we will refund the difference.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's a per event charge, so it's not an annual contract. You bring us what you want to do, we will run it for you and charge you a flat fee. And yeah, if we don't cover that in recognized savings from the event, in terms of what the definition of how we set up a saving as part of the structure, then we will give back whatever falls short. Thank you, Noel. So if you would like to get in touch with us to arrange a demo, then Bridget is our business development executive. Reach out to her in the first instance. There she is. And we speak English and Dutch, and also German. If you have operations in Germany, I speak fluent German as well. And we would be happy to talk to you in your language and get a demo event set up, or show you how it all works and answer any specifics you may have to your specific organization or categories or commodities that you may think would be a good fit for this. And with that, we will move on to the Q&A. So I can see one's just popped in. Bridget, over to you.
Yes, we have a question in the Q&A. It asks, do you only do events? So this Sourcing as a Service webinar was pertaining specifically to running sourcing events for organizations to recognize savings by a more efficient sourcing process. We do more than just sourcing events as Brainbox Consulting. We also do full Ariba implementation. We do cost analysis and so much more. So perhaps there is a follow-up question or a key interest that you have here. So if you could provide additional information, then we can talk along those lines as well.
Yeah, Mridul, just further to what Bridget said, it's a great question. If you have anything specific, if you want to put that in the Q&A, or maybe just drop us an email.
It's coming, but I'll wait just a few minutes.
If we get it, we'll answer it. We'll answer
to
it
elaborate
live.
A little bit more. And in the meantime, again, like Noel and James already mentioned, we are running our source to pay on a no cure, no pay basis initially, just to get you hooked so you can see it yourself and really understand the possibilities of your recognized savings. We like to do this as quick as possible so that you have something that you can share to your team almost immediately. So essentially, when you come to us for this exploration conversation, we can sit down and say, where would you like to make your spend more efficient? What are you currently spending? And then we can help you pick the right categories and products to source, which will get you the most results or the most efficient results up front. And then we can implement that and give you a turnaround. And we aim for the first event to be in under a month from start to finish. So that's really exciting as well, that you can see almost immediate savings. There's no follow-up on the question about do we only do sourcing events, so I will just leave that there for now. If there are any questions regarding sourcing as a service or any of our other implementation or packages where we help with buying, invoicing, and payments, we can automate and transform your entire procurement processes. It really depends on the size of your business, what you're willing to invest, and what suits your company. This sourcing as a service package is made for mid-sized companies who don't want heavy upfront investments, who again don't want monthly cost or annual subscriptions, who really just need a more efficient process and better savings that can help you plan and run your organization more efficiently. And if there aren't any other questions, then we will conclude this webinar. Again, you can reach anyone on our team to find out more, to have further exploratory conversations regarding sourcing as a service or perhaps other packages. And we look forward to getting you started with sourcing as a service. Tune in next month for our follow-up webinar. We will be discussing further topics about sourcing as a service and how it can benefit your organization over the months of November and December. We'll host 2 more following this one, so we hope to see you there, and we look forward to speaking soon. Thanks, everyone.